in Uganda, and I have the awesome privilege of being here to moderate this. I can confirm we are 23 people on the call so far. And I'll wait for a thumbs up from Palu for us to start. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for keeping time, continent time. We really appreciate this. And I believe that we shall use the time that has been designated for this and then release each one of us. For those that must catch planes back home, you'll be able to catch your plane. And for those of us who must grab boda, all Okada will be in position to grab them before the traffic jam that usually hits our roads. Otherwise, you're most welcome. We shall definitely kick off shortly once I get a thumbs up from Palu. And definitely a request comes in before we officially begin. Kindly allow us take a recording of this for purposes of the record and strictly for this purpose. Thank you so much. Glad to have you all.
Thank you, Arthur. Maybe we can give people additional 5 minutes to join, and then we can kick off.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that thumbs up. 5 minutes, and we will get underway. Probably wherever you are, you might have somebody who should actually be on this call, but has not plugged in. Kindly tickle them such that they can join in. Chris, I can see you. Thank you for joining in from wherever you are.
Thank you.
Great. Nadjet, I can see you've joined in. Thank you for coming through. Emmanuel, glad to have you. Abdurrahman Basha, thank you for keeping time. Achilles Road, we recognize your presence. Ayodelon, glad to see you. Now, you'll forgive my terrible accent. It is Ugandan and not very much French and not very much English, but very much Luganda. So if I pronounce your name the most strange of ways, bear with me. Christine, glad to have you. Chris, you can see you. William Oket, glad to have you. Yemis Akinobola, glad to have you. Elizabeth, Francois, yes. Oh, my friend Fulgenci, glad to see you here. Gabriel, you're most welcome. Dube, you're welcome. Judith, glad to see you. Kevin, it's a pleasure. Lista, Madia, somebody is telling me it is not afternoon on their end. It is a good morning. Thank you so much, Modrayo, for that message. A good morning. Glad to have you here. Media Monitoring Africa, we're glad to have you. Yes, kindly bear with Arthur's autopilot. He's not a stranger. He usually escorts me to such meetings. Muthoki, we're glad to have you. Rita, we're glad to have you. Roslyn, I can see Hansi, I can see Toby. Lydia from UNESCO. Yes, Lydia, we're glad to have you. And definitely the entire UNESCO family. Thank you for making this possible. Yusuf, Zoe, David, thank you for plugging in. In the next 2 minutes, we shall get underway. Great. I guess with 42 people on this call, we can get underway with the preliminaries. Once again, a good morning, a good afternoon. I don't know whether we have people on the call that are already the evening of their day or the evening of the previous day, but otherwise you are most welcome to this engagement where we get to introduce the African Media Lawyers Network. And friends, we are here to do an online peer review of our framework, our strategy that definitely is setting ground for this network. Allow me acknowledge the pool of participants that we have, everybody, the entire family from Africa. You're most welcome. I don't know that we have an anthem for Africa, but we should be working on one such that in such engagements, we play that anthem. African journalists, you are most welcome. We are delighted to have you. The media support organizations on the continent, we are delighted to have you. Thank you for making time for this. We have lawyers and experts that have a pain for freedom of expression, assembly, and name it, especially safety of journalists, lawyers, and experts. We are glad to have you on this call. I'm very sure we have members of PALU, and then the network of public interest lawyers is one of those.
De PALU ici.
So, members of PALU family, we're glad to
Nous
have
avons donc la famille PALU, merci.
journalists. They are somewhat drivers on the wheels. Thank you for coming through, and everybody from UNESCO. We have a very large UNESCO family on this call. Lydia Gachungi, the Regional Advisor of Freedom of Expression and Safety for Journalists at UNESCO. Liaison Office, thank you for coming through. I know that office handles both African Union, but also handles the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. You are all most welcome in your respective capacity. Friends, we acknowledge the data privacy and protection needs of all individuals and entities on this call, but we have certain asks that we kindly need to make on you. We guarantee a protection of your data once you share it with us. But also, we also need to know that PALU probably needs this data so that they are able to reach out to us. I'm a living experience of data that was shared with PALU, and then they reached out to me and said, can you moderate this? I am humbled to be moderating this. Arthur Nsereko is my name, from the Network of Public Interest Lawyers here in Uganda, East Africa. So, kind asks, number one, we request that you share your details in terms of your name, your organization, and the capacity in which you join this call, plus also the country. Kindly share those in the chat section such that we are able to capture them for the record, but also strictly for the purposes of the African Media Lawyers Network. The second ask is a kind request for your permission to have this engagement recorded. I know I made this request earlier. Kindly allow us continue with this recording for purposes and easing our follow-up. I don't know if we have any objections to PALU recording this. Oops, now that sounded pessimistic. Let me be more optimistic. Do we give our consent to the recording? Great, thank you. And then a bigger kind request coming from me. This is not coming from PALU, it is coming from me in my little capacity as Arthur. I beseech us all to keep our microphones on mute. We shall use the hand signal to indicate the need to express ourselves. Like enough, we've come to talk about freedom of expression. So use the hand. When the hand is seen, I will alert you on when to unmute such that you can express yourself. I will democratically apply a little despotism here and there, including possibly muting some participants. And on a rare occasion, I hope, evict some participants the big brother way, but that's a kind request on us. And then at the tail end of this engagement, I will make another kind request on us, especially if you can, to turn on your camera for a photo moment. So just so to make sure that we live comfortable, that all people on this call are actually people and not ghosts. So make up your hair, find the best shades or specs that you can find, shop for the best smile for that moment. Otherwise, you're most welcome. Thank you all. And without much ado, we have an agenda that has been shared with us. Quickly, we shall have a setting of the stage for this discussion. By way of welcome remarks, we shall have Ms. Ida Moshi from the Governing Council of the Congress of African Journalists, who will closely be followed by Mr. Christopher Isiguzo, who is the President of the Congress. And then we shall have Dr. Rita Bisono, the Director of UNESCO Addis Ababa Liaison Office to the African Union, and then to the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Representative Office in Ethiopia. And once we've set the stage, then we shall go into the gist of this discussion, where we shall have a presentation of our draft framework. And this will be done by Palu. Sarah Peters, our program officer, development of legal profession at Palu, will do us those honors. And then we shall have an opportunity of almost 20 to 30 minutes where we shall engage through questions. And friends, as we run through this, kindly take note on the side, what have we missed out on in this framework? What activities can we add, creatively add to ensure that the network is live, but also breathes life into this space? And then what should we give priority? Of all the things that we've shared and all the suggestions, what do you feel we should give priority as a network? And then when it comes to the implementation, what should we definitely focus on as sensitive areas? And then are there any definite contacts that we need to grow and move this network? So those three things should be our pointers to guide that discussion at the time of the Q&A. Then we shall have an opportunity to identify areas that we need to improve, but also those actionable recommendations. And Mr. William Olo Janak, the Secretary General of the Congress, will take us through that session, and then we shall come to close. Without much ado, allow me welcome our first person who is going to set the stage for the discussion. Ms. Ida Moshi, kindly unmute and take us away. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ida Mushi. I'm a governing council member of CAJ, Congress of African Journalists. Dear CAJ affiliates, Pan-African Lawyers Union, PALU, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, and other media stakeholders in Africa, support groups and other partners. On behalf of the Governing Council of the Congress of African Journalists, CAJ, I would like to thank you all for joining this important session for the development of our African media industries. We are very grateful to have UNESCO for continuing to support CAJ, PALU, and our other professional association in Africa, which promote press freedom. We know that freedom of expression is the basis of justice for sustainable development. So thank you very much, UNESCO, for your great support to us and for the development of the entire African continent. I should also say that the establishment of an African support network, AMLN, will bring together African journalist organizations, lawyers, and experts, and that will aim to uphold and implement the commitment to promote and defend freedom of expression, media freedom, digital rights, and the safety of journalists as protected under the international, regional, national laws and regulations in Africa. For this opportunity, I would like to welcome the President of CAJ, Mr. Christopher Isiguzo to speaking with you. Welcome, Mr. President. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ida Mushi, a member of the Governing Council of the Congress of African Journalists, all the way from Tanzania. Indeed, I want to welcome great minds, distinguished stakeholders on the continent to this peer review meeting. I want to especially welcome officials from UNESCO, African Union, and other organizations that are part of this meeting today, which in itself is history-making, because at the end of the day, there is just one target. We want to bet a continent-wide media lawyers network, which of course will serve and help promote press freedom, journalist safety, and the rest of that. So indeed, I want to welcome all of us. And from CAJ, we have an array of people that are on board this meeting. The Secretary General, Williams Olo Janak. Of course, we have Gabriel. We have Judith Basutama from Rwanda. We have Alex Muyengeko from Burundi, and so many others that are joining, just to signpost our commitment to ensuring that we have a platform that works for all of us in the continent. If we recall, in 2022, the African media stakeholders carried out extensive consultations on the UN Plan of Action on the safety of journalists and the issue of impunity under the coordination of the UNESCO Addis Liaison Office to AU and UNECA. The recommendations were submitted at the high-level international multi-stakeholder conference, Safety of Journalists, Protecting Media to Protect Democracy in Vienna, with the need to establish an African media lawyers network as one of the crucial components in the implementation of the United Nations Plan of Action. The recommendation was upheld by the African Media Stakeholders meeting at Victoria Falls in November 2022. It was also resolved that the Pan-African Lawyers Union and the Congress of African Journalists be on the driver's seat to ensure that this initiative becomes a reality. And since last year, with extensive support from UNESCO, PALO and CAJ have did joint efforts to ensure that we realize this noble objective. Well, I must also acknowledge support from other organizations, Center for Law and Democracy, IPI, and the rest of them. I must go straight to the objectives, what we really intend to achieve. Because what we're doing has got targets. The African umbrella body of National Media Lawyers Network in Africa is expected to provide professional support in reviewing of media laws and policies and capacity building of lawyers to understand and defend media freedom, safety of journalists, and access to information. Like I said, the primary targets of this network are journalists who often bear the brunt of attacks and intimidation by forces that undermine press freedom and the safety of journalists. Well, we are also partnering media stakeholders, like I said. As we do that, this special focus will equally be given to the needs and requirements for the protection of female journalists who are mostly affected by online violence against women, and in fast-tracking prosecution of the perpetrators. Well, I must recall also that in ensuring that this is realized, the Pan-African Lawyers Union already came up with a framework, a template with which we are going to work to ensure that we realize this objective. Inputs were made to this document during our convention, the African Media Convention, that was held in Lusaka, Zambia in May last year, and during PALO's annual conference in June 2023, they also took a closer look at the document with a view to ensuring that by the time work begins, as it has begun, we all will have something that works for us. So the essence of this meeting is basically for us to take a critical look at this framework, enlist opinions, views from an array of stakeholders in the continent, because it is not just about UNESCO, PALO, or CACH. It is about all of us in the continent. And that's why it becomes highly imperative that this kind of engagement, this kind of review meeting be held, so that everybody will be enlisted, everybody will air their views, and these views will be accommodated in the final analysis, so that the documents will be all inclusive, all embracing, and nobody is expected to be left out. And that's why we felt we're not just going to do a meeting between PALO and CACH and maybe UNESCO or African Union. We have also extended our dragnet to ensure that every stakeholder makes contribution and helps to produce a document that works for us. I must tell us that the African Media Lawyers Network, which we intend to give birth to, will be a significant milestone for journalists in our continent. Like I said earlier on, it will provide essential legal support and protection for journalists who often face threats and intimidation while carrying out their vital work. By collaborating with Pan-African Lawyers Union, AMLN ensures that journalists will have access to legal expertise, which is crucial in defending media freedom, journalist safety, and access to information. This network will also play a pivotal role in reviewing and improving media laws and policies, further enhancing the environment for journalism in all the AU member states. We, like I said, recognize the challenges faced by female journalists, and all these are equally factored in what we're doing. With this support, there will be a focused effort to protect and empower them, while also expediting action in ensuring that perpetrators of such acts are not spared. AMLN is not only about legal support, but also about creating a safer and more conducive space for journalism, where female journalists can thrive without fear. Additionally, the network will foster collaboration between lawyers, civil society, and media stakeholders by building a strong support-based and network. AMLN aims to improve the implementation of judicial decisions related to cases involving journalists in AU member states. This effort will lead to a more effective and efficient response to threats against journalists, ensuring their safety and the preservation of media freedom in our continent. In summary, the Pan-African Media Lawyers Network is a vital initiative that will benefit journalists across the continent by providing legal support, safeguarding media freedom, protecting journalists, and enhancing the environment for journalism. It is a significant step towards ending impunity and ensuring that journalists can carry out their work without fear or hindrance. I want to once more welcome all of us to this meeting and plead that we relax and feel free to make our contributions. Because by the time we are done with this, we are fast-tracking our efforts so that before long, the official launch of the African Media Lawyers Network will be carried out. Once more, I want to express a profound appreciation to UNESCO and indeed to all the strategic stakeholders for their enormous support and commitment to giving birth to a continent that is safe, that is sane, that is environment friendly, and that can ensure that journalism thrives without being put in a pigeonhole. I want to thank you. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, President Chris, for that presidential address, state of the network address, as we birth the network. And Ida, thank you so much for your remarks. Ida is council member with added qualifications in protocol. She knows it is best to invite your own president such that the next time he has something to offer, you are on top of the list. Friends, thank you so much for joining in once again. If you've just joined in, a kind request on you to share your name, your organization, and in which capacity you join this engagement, and also your country. I take cognizance of everybody that is joining in from Nigeria, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Kenya, South Africa, Rwanda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Liberia. I get to discover we have more countries represented here than in the AFCON that is going on. So probably, Paul, we should have more of these than AFCON. Even Uganda has the opportunity of participating here. Toby Medel in Canada, Center for Law and Democracy. We're glad to have you. You are Africa's ambassador to Canada. And without much ado, allow me invite Dr. Rita Bisnoth from UNESCO to give us your opening remarks. Dr. Rita, you're most welcome. Kindly unmute and share your thoughts. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm not too sure if you can see me. Can you see me or not? Okay. Okay. Anyway,
we can see you.
Yes,
you can see. Okay. Excellent. So, Mr. Christopher, the president of the the Congress of African Journalists, Ms. Mushi, the council member also of the Congress of African Journalists, representatives from the Pan-African Lawyers Network, media partners, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Very pleased to be here today on this first meeting, this first continent-wide meeting for the Media Lawyers Network. We are here today to celebrate, to mark two milestones. The first one coming from the results of the 5 continent-wide consultations that we have had in African Union member states on the UN Plan of Action on the Safety of Journalists and the issue of impunity when we marked the 10th anniversary last year. We are also here to celebrate the achievement of one of the key recommendations through this coalition-based approach that brings together all of you, our learned friends, and the media fraternity in all the African Union member states. We are here today because you have all agreed that journalism still remains and is too often a deadly profession. It is vital and it is important that you should be protected. And this is something that you have all been talking about. The safety of journalists is not only a matter of concern for journalists, but for all of us as citizens. And this cannot be addressed by only one partner. And this is because as UNESCO, we recognize the magnitude of challenges facing journalists and the value of the benefits of press freedom, the respect of the rule of law, and the contribution journalists make to the development of democratic societies. Dear media partners, as you're all aware, journalists are the watchdogs of democracy, the defenders of human rights, and the promoters of public debate. You play a vital role in informing, in educating, and engaging our citizens on issues that affect our lives every day. However, as journalists in the African continent, you face many threats, many challenges, and we are aware that women journalists are most especially vulnerable to gender-based attacks, such as sexual harassment, sometimes even rape, online abuse, which very often goes unreported and unpunished. And these attacks not only violate the fundamental rights of journalists, but also undermine the freedom of expression, the rule of law, but most fundamentally, the democracy of our continent. It is for this reason that in 2022, the African Media Stakeholders, with the support of UNESCO's multi-donor program for the freedom of expression and the safety of journalists, we assessed and we produced the first report on the state of media freedom and safety of journalists in Africa. And this assessment identified gaps that undermine the safety of journalists and media freedom in Africa, with highlights indicating that even though there has been some progress in constitutional guarantees for press freedom and expression, but these are often whitewashed by legislation and actions that hinder the development of a professional and independent media. And I think this has even been further exacerbated by the COVID, when we know that many of our governments have used the COVID-19 pandemic to further repress the media by putting in place laws to address hate speech without aligning those with international and regional legal standards. And these actions have continued to lead to many cases of criminalization of free speech, increase in the reported cases of surveillance, especially of journalists and other media actors, which has led to self-censorship and outright abandonment of journalism practiced by journalists, and the closure of media houses. Dear partners, the Africa Media Lawyers Network is therefore very timely and a much needed intervention, which not only will support media in litigation matters, but also provide support in analyzing and raising awareness on several clauses, especially the ones that government are using in media laws to repress media. I would like here to urge all journalist associations, unions, civil society, academia, and other development partners to work together. Let us work in one direction. Let us partner with the lawyers, with the judges, the security, amongst many others, to make our media space on the continent a very conducive environment. Today, more than ever, I am convinced that we can create a safe and an enabling environment for the journalists to perform your essential work without fear, without interference. allow me, before I end, to send out our heartfelt appreciation and thank you to all of you who stand up for journalists, and especially our partners, the Pan-African Lawyers Union, the Congress of African Journalists, and many others. Thank you very much for all your support, and we will continue to work with you as UNESCO. Thank you again, and have a great meeting.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Rita Bisno from UNESCO, for those remarks and for painting a picture of the reason as to why we ought to exist as a network. And if you doubted it, we welcome Alexander Niyungeko from Burundi on this call, and he's just shared his current situation. He is in exile based in Brussels. We shouldn't have any African or any human being staying in exile away from home. The more reason we ought to have this network. Wow. Friends, once again, you're most welcome to these deliberations. And without much ado, allow me now invite Sarah Peters, Program Officer, Development of Legal Profession at PALU, to make a presentation of the draft framework. And after the presentation, we shall have an opportunity to engage. As you listen in, kindly flag the gaps, especially on activities. What can we creatively do to ensure that the network serves its purpose and mandate? What do we ought to give priority as a network? And then what are those definite considerations and contacts that we need to have as we roll out this network? Sarah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Arthur. If you allow me, I'm going to switch off my video to ensure a stable internet connection so we don't face difficulties there. I also just want to make sure I'm doing the presentation of the framework, but I don't want to go verbatim. I just want to make sure that everything is covered, and where we feel like we have to stand still, please raise your hand and we will do so and emphasize where needed. The framework, we've also shared this beforehand. Maybe if possible, Adam, our IT officer, can share it again in the comments so everybody is on board. First, the origin story is well covered by CASH President. Thank you so much. So I will not spend more time on this. I would rather spend more time on the vision statement, allowing me to quickly read it. The network is a network of African journalists, media organizations, lawyers, and experts who are interested and invested in the media law and policy landscape and its impact on society, founded to uphold and implement a commitment to promote and defend freedom of expression, media freedom, digital rights, and the safety of journalists as protected under the international, region, and national laws and regulations in Africa. Now, the decision to read this out loud is mainly because we had somebody commenting on this already, and I really would like him to take the floor as we still have sufficient time to go through the framework, and that is Mr. Toby Mandel from the Center for Law and Democracy. Mr. Mandel, if you are willing to share your comment, and then we can take it further from there. Thank you so much.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Greetings from Canada, a cold and wintry Canada. I hope you're all enjoying better weather than I am. And let me start by saying that although I have a couple of rather small comments, really, on the draft framework, overall, huge congratulations to Kaj and Palau. I think it's an excellent document, really strong, and these comments are quite minor, really. And just to mention to participants that my organization, I mean, the reason that I'm here is that we have for several years now, in collaboration with UNESCO, been running globally a program to develop national media lawyers networks. And we have done that in a lot of countries, including several countries in Africa. And then UNESCO invited us to participate in the development of this regional network or continental network in Africa. And I would like to mention that it is the first such network in the world. So you guys are really leading the way. I do hope that other regions will follow your lead and go ahead with that. So huge congratulations to the key movers and shakers here. My comment on the vision statement really is editorial in nature, and it talks about protected under international, regional, and national laws and regulations. And I had just proposed to edit that a little bit and talk about international and regional treaties, because those documents are treaties, and of course many of them have human rights provisions. And instead of national laws and regulations, I wondered if we could instead talk about national constitutions, because it's the constitutions which guarantee the rights that this network will promote. And while some laws uphold those rights, there are unfortunately in a lot of countries national laws and regulations which don't quite meet up to the constitutional standards. So it just felt to me like it would be better to refer to the national constitutions, the source of the rights guarantees. That's really my comment at this point, and thanks for letting me take the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Medel. We have discussed your comment and because you have also shared with us beforehand. Thanks again. And a suggestion from our part was if we just put as protected by international and regional treaties and conventions, as well as national constitutions, laws, and regulations. This allows us to cover all. We don't exclude, and we include everything. I see your thumbs up. Unless there's any other additional comment from the room, I just continue with the framework. Great. Next up is the mission statement. This is how to achieve our vision, and we will do this, of course, through advocacy, research, capacity building, raising public awareness, and strategic litigation. I want to have a little bit more time to spend on core values, as they are the foundation of the organization's philosophy and culture. First and foremost, transparency. Transparency should definitely be there so the network can build trust from its members and from the involved and external stakeholders. And financial transparency plays a big role in achieving this trust, in getting this trust. So the network should definitely, therefore, amongst others, make sure that it has transparent financial reporting mechanisms and, of course, responsible budget management. Again, Mr. Toby Mendel, we've received your comment to include something on financial probity. So our suggestion is maybe to put this under transparency or accountability, not as a separate title, but definitely include it and make it more specific in those two. So the financial probity, to make sure that there's financial transparency, we will mention it, make it more specific under the title transparency. Okay, I see your thumbs up. Thank you so much. If there's no further comment, I'll continue. Okay. The next one is accountability. So it's the same as transparency. It's as essential for building trust, but it's also important to increase the productivity of the network. And for example, to ensure this accountability, the network could develop a code of ethics, and that can outline the professional standards and responsibilities that are expected from the committee and also from its members. The next value we emphasize is equity. So although this is a given almost, it's very important to emphasize that the network ensures fair and inclusive participation, representation, and opportunities for all members. So this will also be represented in the membership criteria, and we will have a merit-based selection process, so no discrimination or favoritism will sneak in there. On equality, I can also be very, very short. We will make sure that we target all African regions, as we've done so with the validation meeting. We will have a gender balance. We will include youth and at the same time include senior members to benefit from their experiences. And the same will be represented in our communications, that are translated sufficiently in all relevant languages, in our activities, partnerships, and in our decision-making processes. Respect for diversity is essential. Then professionalism. Of course, members, committee members and members should adhere to a high ethical standard. And I refer again to the signature to a code of conduct that would be essential before admitting to the network. There also should be a willingness to further develop themselves by following trainings, workshops, etc. And of course, when we are dealing with very sensitive information, confidentiality is something we should definitely take up and respect. On integrity, another value we should adhere to is basically the network to make sure that we maintain clear professional boundaries and we avoid engaging in behaviors that could compromise the professional integrity or create conflicts of interest. And then last but not least, definitely not least, the sustainability. And this is something in the works, definitely should be prioritized, is that the network develops a strategic plan of its own with a focus on achieving sustainable change and that has a lasting impact. I will pause for a moment if there are any questions or remarks. If not, I'll continue. Arthur, please assist if there are any remarks so they don't go unnoticed. Thank you.
I'm watching it. Thank you.
Okay, great. On the objectives, which are already mentioned by the speakers before me, I can be very, very quick. The key objectives of the African Media Lawyers Network are to build a network of and for journalists, media organizations, and African lawyers, and offer them a platform and organizational support. This is already in the works, and everyone here online is helping us with it to organize a database so we can all bring each other together and facilitate further collaborations and activities. Next objective is to promote, collaborate, and undertake strategic litigation. And this is why certain people in this room are also essential. Amongst others, Mr. David Segano from the East African Law Society, Mr. Maxwell Kadiri, Mr. Masawe Fulgen from LHRC, who are all experts in the field of strategic litigation. They are present, should be present, and hopefully they will be available to share their expertise in the future with us so we can benefit and learn from each other. Next objective is to foster and bundle research, as well as develop tailored educational resources. So the goal is to work together with research institutes and provide updated materials, so to universities and or law schools. So we have the opportunity to specialize themselves and to provide a high-level advice to their clients, being journalists and or media organizations. Then another objective, develop the capacity of future African lawyers. This is in line with the goal of the network to make sure that African lawyers are utilizing the African mechanisms correctly and efficiently. Just two more, complements existing initiatives, and this is a very important one. The network is here to ensure inclusivity and avoid repetition. So we're also not competing with anyone. We are looking for ways to elevate and amplify other work without losing track of each other's ownership in the project. And I want to highlight this one. Last but not least, to provide legal aid and legal services. So when going to the media convention, the last media convention, I noticed a high need for rapid response mechanisms. So this is also where the network can definitely play a role and enhance the responses that it definitely needs. Last, the activities, very short. As I said before, we will accomplish our objectives with advocacy, strategic litigation, standard setting, capacity building. We will serve as an umbrella body, research and analysis. We shall build partnerships and provide legal aid. On the membership part, this I want to just read verbatim. We have individual membership and institutional membership. Individual membership are advocates, in-house counsels, and retired practitioners with experience practicing in media law and the related human rights context, and are located and or practicing in Africa. The institutional membership is open to organizations involved in promoting media freedom and freedom of expression, or having an interest in supporting the network's objectives. Institutional members of the network can include media organizations, law firms, academic institutions, and civil society organizations. I want to quickly emphasize or spend a little bit more time on the organizational structure. So to facilitate this network and make a smooth operation, this network will execute their activities under a PALU committee. The benefits is that PALU, that it will serve under that it will execute these activities under a PALU committee is that it will enjoy PALU's network. It can, and if the committee is vibrant enough, enjoy different group mailings, list, WhatsApp groups, communities, and our membership engagement platform can be used for these goals we're setting out. This is quite standard in my view. The committee will consist of a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. Of course, later on, when capacity allows it and when the interest and support is there, other functions and subcommittees and so on can be created. But so far, the goal is to have a president, a very active president, a very active secretary, and a very active treasurer. This is where I'll end, only to say that the first steps after this will be a call for nominations. So beware to check your emails. And then there will be a nomination process, which is very straightforward, just to send in a cover letter and CV. And then there will be an anonymously online voting mechanism that will allow for vote for the committee members. I think this is about it. If anybody has input, question, remarks, thoughts, please share so. I thank you for your attention.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sarah, for that quick run through the framework as it stands. You have 2 questions in the chat room. The first comes from Dr. Yemis, who says, what do we mean by bundle research? That is in our objective number 3 of the framework. And then Judith in Uganda is asking, how do we become members? Individual or institutional? That is not clear in the framework. You quickly respond to those before we have Rosalind come in first with the hand. Sarah, respond to those 2, and then we get Rosalind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arthur. So for bundling research, we've noticed that there's already a lot of material available, especially from UNESCO. So again, to avoid duplication, we want to create a platform where these materials are available to anyone, and preferably also in multiple languages, so we don't exclude anyone. So that's the goal, to create a platform where everything is assembled, nicely categorized and translated in language, so we don't leave anyone behind. The second question on how to become a member, I understand that it's not a straightforward answer, but and I'm also reaching out to my PALU colleagues if they have any input. But I would say so far the PALU Secretariat, and that's one of the benefits that the framework, that the network is currently under PALU's committee, that the PALU Secretariat, depending on capacity, can take this on and facilitate. So a simple email to PALU Secretariat in the future would suffice so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I hope Dr. Yemis and Judith, you have been well answered. Judith, sorry, I had exported you from Rwanda / Burundi to Uganda. It is only that you remind me of my primary school ex. But thank you, Judith, for that question. Yes, Rosalind, kindly unmute and share your thoughts.
In fact, it's a bit misleading. When I say I'm from Burundi and I'm based in Rwanda, it's a bit misleading. Some put me in Rwanda, other put me in Burundi, but I'm Burundian based in Rwanda for the political climate in Burundi, you know.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Yes, Evelyn, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So thank you, Sarah, for the run through the framework. I think it's quite clear. I just wanted to clarify in terms of the network being a committee of PALU, whether those office bearers have to be members of PALU for them to be nominated.
Thank you, Rosalind, for that question. I don't see any other hand raised, but we have some questions in the chat section. Oh, just before we go to the chat section, yes, William, and then Christine. William?
Good afternoon, colleagues. Can I be heard?
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. So having listened to this very noble presentation from all the speakers, first I need to say that this is an idea whose time has come, a noble initiative that needs all our support. So just wanted to run through very quickly, after having gone through the framework, maybe those who are the secretariat or rapporteurs could take this down so that where responses can be given, that will be appreciated. One, this to me appears to be a broad-based coalition of those who support and defend media freedom. It is not just about the lawyers. So the name, the African Media Network Lawyers, does it not seem it is very limiting, because they are lawyers, yes, they are journalists, they are people from academia, a whole spectrum of other people, civil society, a broad range of organizations who will join. So probably, I don't know whether the promoters of this initiative, have you thought of giving it a name that does not necessarily restrict it to lawyers? And I will give suggestions in the chat box later on of a name which I think is broad-based and not just limiting it to lawyers. Then two, on the objectives, there is a need to present specifically legal advisory. All right, there is the aspect of litigation, but I think all over the continent, there are challenges. There are journalists, there are a network of journalists who at times are in need of legal advice that may not necessarily lead to a litigation. Some of those issues may be resolved through legal advisory services. So that needs to come out very clearly in the objectives. I did not see that. Then in terms of the activities, it will also be very important where there is research and capacity building, then automatically you should also have training, the training aspect. Training aspect is very core, because when you capacity build and you do research, you need to disseminate, and some of these could happen through training. Last but not least, there is in terms of framework and organizational structure, it has been proposed that it is being set up as a committee of PALU. My thoughts were, okay, this is a child that is being born, and you know, when a child is born, you'll need to be future looking with this child. And based on the objectives and the terms of reference, this seems to be a child who will grow wings very soon. So the question is, has there been any thought of maybe probably setting it up as an affiliate, maybe probably of PALU, rather than just a committee for purposes of future growth and spread throughout the continent? Then last but not least, I think this is very last now, on the structure, it has been proposed there are 3 officials. That is the president, treasurer, and secretary. Being that the outlook of this organization is broad-based, the mandate is huge, that committee will probably be overwhelmed. Has there been any thoughts of maybe probably putting what I would call regional coordinators, maybe probably East Africa, West Africa, North Africa, and those will be people who will be looking out at events and happenings across the region and informing this committee. So those are my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William. At the risk of having Christine's hand get tired while raised, Christine, can we have you unmute?
Okay, so thank you very much. I appreciate that. And first of all, is just to say thank you to Sarah and the team, and yourself and the team, for even thinking through this initiative. It is indeed a good initiative. We we are glad we've just recently sort of concluded a project that we were working at. I work at Katiba Institute, which is a non-governmental organization based in Kenya. And we just recently concluded a project where we were undertaking strategic litigation for the media, including development of resource material. So even to see aspects of strategic litigation, which we feel are key, and also the need for continued engagement, particularly with media, not just the journalists themselves, but also media houses, because I think there's a lot of need for, what can I say? There's a number of human rights violations that also need to be addressed within the media houses. But that said, I think one of the things that we might also need to think through is, one is the sustainability of the initiative. And maybe one of the things that we can do as we're looking at the membership and the individual membership, maybe think through how do we also incorporate students, so legal students who may not necessarily be practitioners, but providing platforms for such students that then tomorrow have the interest, and two, the skill set, which they can only get from this platform that already exists, that's already interested in issues of that is interested in issues to do with protection of the media. I think the other question we had, the other issue we had has been raised in terms of the name as well, making it more accommodating to the different stakeholders that will be coming in towards giving life to what we are looking into actualizing. So I think I can stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine, for that. Sarah, could we first address that before we go to the thesis of questions in the chat room?
Yes, we certainly can. First and for all, thank you so much for everybody being so actively involved. This is something we appreciate and very much take into account. I don't know if I captured all the questions, but I'm going to try. And if I miss something, please just repeat them in the chat. First and for all, I think this is from William, and I saw also Mr. Toby Mendel answering in the chat room about this lawyers network, more specifically about the name. But before I come over as I want to defend the name, I would like maybe to Kash to take this one, the Congress of African Journalists, somebody that can speak as a representative of more journalists and media organizations. If somebody is willing.
Sorry, we didn't get that.
No worries, no worries. I was just wondering, so on the question from William, more specifically, and the question has been repeated by others, more specifically about the name of the network, that it mentioned lawyers. I see Mr. Mandel has posted in the chat room his point of view. But before we come across like as if we are defending the name, it may be better for Kash to take this one on as a representative of the media organization and journalists.
Well, thank you very much. I think basically what the questions were garnering here and the views that have been expressed are largely the essence of this meeting. For us to get an array of opinions on the network, which already is in place. What we're doing in May in Ghana is basically to launch, and we have engaged a whole lot of other stakeholders before we even arrived at the name. And during the stakeholders meeting in Victoria Falls, I think the name was equally adopted. And that's why we are flying with that. And of course, looking at it, African Media Lawyers Network, the media is represented, the lawyers are represented. I think it is all inclusive. If there is need for there to be any review, I think we will still look at it. But for now, that's the name that has been adopted. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I've also seen the messages in the chat. Maybe we should make a distinction between the name of the network and then actual activities, because as Mr. Mendel also said, there is the individual membership and institutional membership. The institutional membership can very much be media organization and journalists, and is open to all. So, but I've took your notes on the, yeah, I've taken notes of your remarks, and we'll take them into account. The next question, unless somebody wants to address it and take the floor, about the focus, about the name being targeted at lawyers. Then I'll move to the next question.
Yes, this is real, if it's allowed, if I can say a few words. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes, good morning and thank you and congratulations to all of you. I don't want to waste time, but I think this is about lawyers defending journalists and the media. I think we may not even be a lawyer, but be part of the network. For example, I'm part of the network or on the list of the West African media lawyers, though I'm not a lawyer. So I don't think the name should be a problem. But I also think that in the process, you can have associate members who are not practicing lawyers, but who are advocates to defend the media and media freedom. So I believe that keeping the name African Lawyers Network should be the best thing, but we may have associate members. When we go ahead in the process, we can have associate members or any person who behave as an advocate of press freedom. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Sarah, are you there?
Sorry. Thank you so much for the contribution. If I quickly may, sorry, Arthur, I'm going down to through the questions quickly. Also, some question was raised about does a member need to be PALU's a member of PALU, and this is a no. Although they can benefit from also being a PALU member, is it not a must? This is just something that PALU offers, and it, as I said in the presentation, it wants to smooth the execution of the framework. It wants to smoothen and assist with providing network, providing platforms and so on to facilitate the execution of the process. Of course, if this takes its own identity, then the better, of course, but this is just how we can operationalize. We are thinking of operationalizing it for now. Then I saw also the comment from Dr. Djemisi, saying that there's no mentioning of women in the document. This is exactly why we need your expertise. We included that gender balance should be there, but please, this is really an area that should be addressed, and we hope we can lean on your expertise in this area. I'll see if I remember any others. On the activities, there's also a comment from William. Yes, trainings are also mentioned in the documents. Sorry for not mentioning it during the presentation, but I wanted to go quick and don't take too much. And on the mentioning of having a regional coordinator, that's a really good idea. And I think it's definitely something the network can work towards too, but as for now, it's maybe just a little bit early. Also on having sustainability, as mentioned by the Katiba Institute, a really good remark. This is something definitely we should focus on, and the network committee, so the committee members should definitely prioritize this to make a strategic plan and to include the sustainability factor in it. So, and to incorporate students. This was also mentioned in the framework and also mentioned by me in the presentation. these are essential things. We have to incorporate universities, law schools, research institutes. So we cover all bases youth is the future, and we have to target them from and provide these chances from an early age, of course. Please let me know if you missed something.
Sarah?
And I invite. Oh, sorry. Yes, tell me.
I want to allow you a break such that you sip on some water. Maji, was it Moji? Mojirayo? Your hand was up. Sorry,
Yes, Mojirayo.
And
yes,
I saw it appears it got tired. We are now on you. Yes, please.
Sorry, Mr. Otto. Yes. My name is Mojirayo Koyano. I'm a lawyer in Nigeria, a digital rights lawyer. And I believe I'm one of those lawyers in Nigeria that have really taken time to represent journalists in Nigeria pro bono for several years. Let me say like 8 years, yeah, before I decided to establish or register on an organization that would do that and give strategic litigations to journalists and media houses. So when I saw the format that Sarah, was shared about and then placed on the chat room, I feel that this particular group should not start as a PALU thing. I think if you wanted to start, you should start independent of PALU. If we are going to consider what Mr. Baglu just also said, that we are not looking at lawyers, we are not looking at only lawyers. We do have organizations that have been representing journalists for years. I can mention one of them at the top of my head. That is Media Rights Agenda, for instance, in Nigeria. It has really represented several journalists, and I've been a lawyer that took up their cases at one point or the other. So I think that we should not start this organization, this AMLN, with even the word lawyers. I think that should not even be the focus. If you want to have it as an association of media, maybe representatives or something, let it not have that nomenclature lawyer. That's the way I'm looking at it from. And there are so many issues, but let's just leave that as, because Sarah's addressed some of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mojirayo, for sharing your thoughts. More or less what William is proposing, that it should become a network of media advocates and defenders, NOMAD, without the R, just to be sure. Thank you, William. Yes, Sarah, back to you.
Thank you, Arthur. Very quickly, thank you for the comment. And please, if you have not done so, please provide your contact details in the chat box so we can reach out for you. Any input is appreciated, and we will try to take all into account. But we considered having a separate identity. However, it came with a lot of administration and registration and formalities. So this is why PALU offered to have this as a PALU committee, just to get to facilitate the execution and not further delay everything with administration and formalities. Just to give a background. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Ziad El Hani, let's hear from you.
Thank you, dear friends. In fact, I hoped that there was a possibility of translation for this important meeting in French. I don't hide you that my English is not very perfect, and that's why I had some problem in trying to follow your quick speeches. But I want just to tell you about an experiment we had here in Tunisia. We had an organization which called the TOPG, the Tunisian organization to protect journalists, and the board of this organization was composed of journalists and lawyers. Sorry, are you hearing me?
We're hearing you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, okay, so I told you that the board of this organization was composed of both journalists and lawyers, and we did a very good job. First, in the matter of forming both lawyers and journalists about the law of press in Tunisia, because it's a special
En Tunisie, parce qu'il y a une sorte de droit spécial. Et
journalists in their trials, they used the principles of the criminal law, which is different, totally different from the press law. So we made, we formed them in this specific law, and also we formed journalists in this law to know their rights and how to defend themselves. I think that it was an interesting experience. Mainly, we had these lawyers who were usually defending journalists in front of justice. And if this shows some things, shows that we consider that lawyers and journalists are both the wings of the bird freedom. So it's very important that they collaborate together. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ziad. That is noted. President Chris, are you returning?
No,
friends,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you. And friends, I had those 3 questions that I'd asked earlier. Is there any activity that you feel we've left out that we need to focus on that will definitely breathe life into this network? But also, where do we press our priority? We know there are very many pressing issues when it comes to interventions, but where we actually press our priority such that when we engage, then impact is felt. So we'd love to hear your views on that, if any. But as Sarah did say, kindly, if you need to engage Palu and the Congress on a one-on-one, you feel free to share your contacts with Palu. This is a consultative process that does not end today, because we're allowing for more space and time to ensure that our framework is one that will serve the interest of the larger good. Yeah.
Sorry, can I come in?
Yeah, first, come.
All right. I would suggest in terms of priorities that there be a strategic planning session, perhaps of the Pioneer Committee that will be formed soon after this meeting. Then they'll identify the priority areas and perhaps present a strategy document that can be discussed round robin. Thank you.
Great thought, appreciated, and it has been picked. Friends, lest you say yes. Timothy, yes.
My name is Demisani Mtombeni. I'm from Zimbabwe and a member of Palu. I would suggest that you also focus on increasing your online visibility across all social media platforms so that we can reach out to as many people as possible. Most of the times, individuals, organizations are active on all social media platforms. So it is a very cheap and convenient way of reaching out to as many people as possible across the globe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mbeni. That is appreciated. Friends, the floor is ours. Lest you say we were locked out in a platform that is advocating for freedom of expression. Okay, great. The conversations definitely continue even within the chat room. Allow me move on and invite William Ola, Secretary General of the Congress. The floor is yours. Kindly come, share, identify, flag those areas of improvement, actionable recommendations. William?
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, colleagues. This has been a very useful discussion, and a lot of suggestions have come forth. I, of course, did pick. I know our colleagues at Palu, and we have a team taking all this. But I did isolate a number of things that were said that could form the basis of what we could say, are areas of improvement and actionable recommendations. So I'll just highlight some of them, and as I think the moderate has indicated, if there are any additional areas, from any of the stakeholders gathered, I think you are free to forward this to us and continue sharing on the chat, but also, perhaps write something more comprehensive. One of the first things that I picked, of course, was the suggestion about the improvement of the vision, especially talking about national constitutions and international treaties. That this is very important, so that we don't talk about the laws, but we talk about the national constitutions and international treaties. So I think as Kaj and Palu, in terms of improving the document, that will be a key area of improvement. The other one, I think, was there have been robust discussions around the name of African Media Lawyers Network, and I think Sarah did indeed, and Chris, the president, indicated the discussions that led to this. I think there have been suggestions about change of this. I think as the implementers of this, all the suggestions like looking at the name, the possible changes if need be, I think this will be checked. But I picked up the issue of within the document talk about legal advisory, especially to journalists, and also the issue of research, that within the research component there would be need for training, dissemination of research through training. And then, of course, there was the issue of, the African Media Lawyers Network. When it grows, the suggestion is that it could overwhelm the three officials, that are suggested, and that there would be need to talk about coordinators within the different regions of Africa, North, South, West, the Eastern, and so on. So I think that is an area that would be considered for improvement and possibly, actioned on. There has also been suggestion from, I think, Christine Kuria of Katiba Institute in Kenya, about the area, drawing from their experience about strategic litigation, that there would be need within this framework or network to talk about, make provision for continued engagement with lawyers, not only lawyers, but media houses, because she has suggested, and that is true, we know, there are violations also within media houses. So engagement with the media houses is also a key thing that I think has been mentioned. And also the question of sustainability, she did mention that, and also incorporating legal students to grow their interests and skill sets. And this could be useful to the network because they are not necessarily practicing advocates, but working with the network, that this would add value both to the network and also to the young lawyers who then can be brought on board and begin to interact with the processes and develop interest as the successors of the older, lawyers, and then take up, work with the network. The issue of associate members, I think, in terms of looking at the framework of AMLN, African Media Lawyers Network, the issue of it's tied to the name, but also in terms of the composition. So the issue of associate members, who are not lawyers, I think this is one of the things that it will go a long way with the suggestions that have been made. Who then is part of the network? How do we accommodate other people who are interested in working with the network who may not necessarily be lawyers, whether they're individuals or organizations? I think that is a key thing, an area that will need to be discussed within the team. And I think it's a good suggestion also. And somebody, of course, did indeed indicate that we can talk about associate members. That would mean that within the framework that we are reviewing today, we look at specific areas where we can describe what kind of associate members and how they come on board. I think I did also get the view that some stakeholders who are here feel that while, of course, the document talks about gender, the question of dealing with the gender issues and the violation of female journalists, that it may not have been as more expressive as may be desired, and therefore we may look at the lines that we're talking about that and have a much more expressive provision for how the network will deal with the women journalists and their issues. But I want to confirm that what Sarah presented, there's a very, very strong component of how we deal with the female journalists and how we want to support them. But I noted the fact that perhaps we need to make it stronger, more expressive. So we'll look at that within the document. The other area, I think there has been the suggestion that the network is already in place. It is moving, and it's going, as the president of CAJ has mentioned, we're gonna launch it in May during the African Media Convention. But the suggestion is that we need a strategic planning session with the team that will have been on board to develop a strategy document that then can be able to help the network grow and actually execute its mandate. I think one of the other suggestions that has come is also in terms of we have presented this, but it appears that in terms of visibility, in terms of how available this information has been, is something that requires us to work. And therefore, the question of increasing online visibility so that we reach other, as many organizations that may be interested or who are affected or who are actors within the African continent and beyond, I think this is a key thing. If I've done a summary, I did take more notes, but if there is something that I may have left out in terms of areas of improvement and actionable recommendations that have been made here, I think we'll be happy to receive them both on the chat but also directly, because this is something that is ongoing, as the moderator said. Yeah, thanks, Bwana Moderator.
Wow. William, you've done an incredible job. You are 100 times better than my AI assistant, Autopilot. You have practically traversed a big chunk of what has come through. And friends, like William has made a request. If you feel there is anything he has not flagged, we are still here, at least for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Let's make good use of the chat. And definitely Palu promises that they will get in touch with a number of us just to pick our minds very clear. Others, thank you so much for flagging those areas. You've done a great job, William. Sarah, could you kindly return and share with us next steps for the prospected bright future?
Thank you, Arthur. The very bright future indeed. Next steps concretely is that we gather all this information and comments, and as William has already mentioned, we have run through and discussed them very thoroughly. And then I would like for everybody here to be present to really keep an eye on their emails. And hopefully we will be sending out calls for membership and calls for nomination for the committee members very soon. On the strat plan, I really emphasize that this should also be one of the priorities, but this is in the hands of the committee that will be established after nomination. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And those are quick. Next point, Zoe. Yes, Zoe, especially since your name lies lowest in the participants list. Zoe?
Thank you very much. Firstly, congratulations on this initiative. I think it has been a long time coming and much needed, specifically in this space. Something that has been a recurring issue throughout this discussion that I picked up was what I would put down to as the relationship between Paulo and this new institute, offshoot, whatever, and it is currently being described as being structured as a committee within the Paulo structure. Is that correct? If so, I mean, there are certain, issues to consider. I get a sense that there is already a desire by those who wish to support it for some level of independence from a broader structure. And I'm reminded, for example, of IFEX, the International Freedom of Expression Exchange, and how that was structured as an independent organization, but housed within another organization that was very central in its establishment and which provided that institutional support to this, to IFEX. So, I mean, the argument of excessive administration, I don't think that that is necessarily a sound argument in this case.
Thank you, Zoe, for that great thought. It has been captured. Gabriel, in 2 minutes.
Yes, it's exactly what I wanted to say, exactly what Zoe has just said. I feel that this is a launch of an organization and we are in a transition. Building an organization takes time. So Paulo having experience, I think it's good to allow Paulo to make sure that this organization takes off. And then who knows what happens next. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. And friends, William is in the chat section and he's telling us that there is a mailing list that has been developed to continue and improve our document, but also the discussions. So kindly, could you send suggestions to that email address? It is in the chat room. And let's make sure that we all contribute such that our contributions are heard and well captured. Final remarks are coming in from Andrea Kairola, who is a senior program specialist, freedom of expression and safety of journalists section at the UNESCO. Andrea.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes. Hello from UNESCO headquarters, in particular from the section for safety of journalists and freedom of expression. Thank you to Paulo and, of course, to UNESCO at this, and to Lydia for this invitation, and to have the honor of the closing. Also, on behalf of the International Program for Development Communication Secretariat, I'd like to convey that IPDC is very pleased to support this project. As you know, UNESCO is coordinator of the UN Plan of Action on Safety of Journalists and the Issue of Impunity, trend of proliferation of legal measures targeting misinformation, disinformation, cybercrime, hate speech, alongside with abusive legal practices and judicial harassment pose a mounting threat to media freedom. In particular, the issue of lapse as well as journalists in prison are a global phenomenon across all regions, unfortunately on the growth, and of major concern to us. And the response should be multifold, as you discussed, including with such projects to support media defense. It's also in complement with another initiative many of you are aware of and involved, the initiative to train the judiciaries across the world, starting from the global south and also in Africa, and an initiative that's already trained over 36,000 judges and judicial operators in the world. To address these challenges, it is vital to ensure that journalists can effectively access the legal and judicial remedies available to them in addressing the threats and attacks they face. We are committed to work on this, to keep on working on that. Many of you are also aware about the Global Media Defense Fund that has also supported the defense, the legal defense of over 5,000 journalists already in the past 5 years, involving 1,000 plus lawyers across the world. So let's continue this kind of info sharing, this kind of work. Let's of course seek also for synergies, partnership across the various platforms, those involved in the Global Media Defense Fund, those of course that are also in other regions, in other continent, and echoing what was already said by colleagues, highlighting the need to coordinate and to work. We, as UNESCO, are of course ready to support that as, let's say, coordinate the implementation of the UN Plan of Action Safety of Journalists. I know that has been an extremely productive discussion, and you have now, let's say, a lot of energy and elements to continue this difficult collective challenge to defend journalists across Africa. Thank you very much. So it's all from Paris.
Thank you so much, Andrea, much appreciated. And thank you to UNESCO and the entire team that has put this together. Friends, I had the kind request at the beginning that when we get to this point, I will ask us to turn on our videos such that Palu is able to take a photograph. Thank you, Sarah. I can see your video. I'm waiting to see other videos. Palu is kind of requesting us to turn on our videos if we can, such that we can have a photograph taken of whoever has been a part of this. Somebody said we are pace setters. I'm very sure you would love to be on the wall of fame of those that were part of these discussions at the start of it all. Great. Thank you so much. I'll wait for a thumbs up from whoever is behind that camera to know that we are all captured. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Nipela. Thank you, Mojirayo. Thank you, Bani. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Lister. Thank you all. Yes, Lydia, I can see you. William, Gabriel, Francois. Hi, Francois. Francois is my good friend. Glad to see you here. Yes, Dr. Emius. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sure by now the photograph has been taken. If it has not been taken, then we may consider a network of photographers to run this. Allies, friends, thank you so much. It has been great. You've been great participants for this. I remain yours, Arthur Nsereko, at the Network of Public Interest Lawyers, still subject to the 38-year rule of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni here in Uganda. Charles, be blessed.
A great moderator. Thank you very much.
Pleasure is mine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Fulgency.
How are you, Arthur?
Arthur is great. You've been smoked out. Oh, Dumsan. Glad to see you.
How are you,
my brother?
Hey, Brian.
Thank you, William. You did a great job. I'm sure at this point the protocol reverses and the president leaves last.